Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Good evening, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with you on this 27th of October. Thanks for watching Alaska Weather. As always, when you have questions about the weather and would like to check your forecast, simply call 1-800-472-0391. You can always find this information online at weather.gov/Alaska, or feel free to email me anytime about questions you have about the show or things that you're finding on our website. I'm happy to help and serve you anytime I can. david.snyder@noaa.gov is the easiest way to reach me. Let's take a look at some video here. This courtesy of the Juneau Empire. There has been a tremendous amount of water flowing into the Juneau area, and as a result there, flooding is being observed around Juneau. The Jordan Creek, as of about 4 or 5 o'clock this afternoon, the river stage there had reached 11 feet. 9.7 is flood stage, and it looks like it is still climbing by late this afternoon. So a flood warning is in effect for that area of Juneau there. They have seen at least 3 to 4 inches of rain, and in some cases maybe upwards of 5 inches of rain just in the last 24 hours or so. So a significant amount of water flowing through the region. Here's a look at a satellite picture, and my apologies, our satellite system is acting up a little bit today, let's say. So as you can see, we've got a very large channel of moisture that's working up across the Gulf of Alaska, and here is Sitka, and then Juneau would be right about here. All of this moisture is pointed right at their area, so this is that flow that is really keeping that very moist atmosphere pointed right in their direction. Now you can look up towards south central Alaska. This is the back side of the weather system there, and this system will continue pointing its way through the region. By late tonight and tomorrow, a lot of this moisture will be well out of the way, so it's not going to keep raining there like this a whole lot longer, but for right now, water levels will likely respond as that rainfall continues in the region. Out across the west, you can see some drier air here. We're also going to take you through a tour of a different type of a satellite picture here. Here's a look out to the west. And you can see that moisture again flowing into western Alaska. Here is the backside of the next weather maker, and then here is western Alaska, the Alaska Peninsula, and the chain. We've got another circulation out here. This is going to spin up into a stronger weather system as we get into the next 24 hours or so. And as that progresses eastward, it will likely dip into a 974 millibar low. Now, as we look at this, you can see here's the animation that's working across western Alaska. The moisture is working up through the Alaska Peninsula and into the Bristol Bay region. Out across the bulk of the interior now, here's the North Slope, and out across the Kotzebue Sound region, snow will continue here. And in fact, for the Kobuk and Noatak valleys, for the next 2 days, it's probably going to snow enough to reach storm totals of 1 to 2 feet. So winter weather advisories are still in effect for many areas there. And across the Alaska Range, as that system is working its way northward, we expect to see winds continue in the region, probably on the order of, gusts from the south about 70 miles per hour or so. So that's what you're going to see here with those southerly winds across the Alaska Range, looking at probably weather advisories, or wind advisories, I should say, that'll continue through the evening hours before that finally settles down. And once again, across southeast, flood warnings are in effect at this point. General small stream flood advisories for other parts of southeastern Alaska. We're still expecting to see some minor rises on local tributaries there, thanks to the excessive amount of rain here in that short amount of time. Those should improve shortly. And out across the west, again, weather advisories continue for the northern and central interior. Tanana was looking at an observation earlier this afternoon of freezing rain, and certainly that has been a problem for all of these regions today, as that warm and wet air is still lingering very close to the surface, and snow is falling into that, melting, and then refreezing on contact. So that could be mixing in with the weather that you're seeing across central and western Alaska. Let's take a look at the weather map then for tonight. High pressure will move in. You're still looking at rainfall across parts of southeastern Alaska. This should gradually shift eastward, and the main channel of that moisture is expected to push further and further south toward the Dixon entrance. High pressure at 1,029 millibars will greatly improve the weather across southeast, but it's also going to insert a chance of fog across the area. So watch for that to take over. A lot of that rain should start to wind down after about 10 or 11 o'clock tonight. So improvements are coming. And then watch for fog in the morning. Out across the west, the backside of this, what we call the return flow, that south and westerly flow, will quickly develop again, and the next weather maker will make its way into the west coast. So watch for rain to spread further and further north. There's going to be periods of snow across the interior and the northwestern interior especially that are it's just going to keep snowing there, it looks like. The weather advisory tells us that winter weather conditions will continue. But it looks like for that area in northwestern Alaska, again, 1 to 2 feet of snow could be possible in that region as we go through the rest of the weekend and into your Sunday. Here's a look at Saturday's weather now. And look at the great improvement across southeastern Alaska. High pressure across the western Canadian interior and also across the Gulf. You have a trough of low pressure now in the wake of that weather maker, but conditions should be drying out. A little bit of a breeze should help to clear up some of the fog in the afternoon. And again, gradual improvements for you in southeast after a pretty wet and soggy day today that's not quite over yet. Out to the west, low pressure up across the Chukchi Sea, again battering northwestern Alaska with that snow machine. You'll see a trailing line of showers of snow all the way across the northern Bering. That colder air, though, is trying to work its way southward, not doing such a hot job. In fact, it looks like it's going to lose the battle as low pressure sits across the central chain at 990 millibars. This is what we're looking at on the satellite picture out west. This is going to ramp up into a stronger system as we go through the rest of the weekend. So with high pressure in place across the eastern Gulf, feeding in moisture still to the interior, making snow across the north, mixed precipitation to times across the central interior and very close to, if not over, Fairbanks from time to time. Watch what happens with this. This storm deepens to 974 millibars. We still have high pressure across the eastern Gulf, so that's slowing the progress down here. So what happens? Low pressure deepens. The gradient here between high and low pressure has to strengthen, and that means the southerly winds are going to pick up once again, pushing more of that moisture northward. That's going to bring rain back into south central Alaska, and it looks like the best chance for that to pick up would be on Sunday. And as you move further north into the higher terrain, that is going to be snow. So the Alaska Range, especially the western Alaska Range, into the upper Kuskokwim, into the central and middle Yukon valleys, all the way into eastern Norton Sound. And still for the Kobuk and Noatak valleys, we're still talking about snow there. That will stretch across the south-facing slopes of the Brooks Range. Places that are going to be a little quieter would be the upper Tanana Valley, the upper Yukon Valley, and northern parts of southeast are still going to be generally quiet as we go through Sunday. Watch for pockets of fog there across the east in the morning. But other than that, a much quieter end of the weekend than how you're starting it today. Up north, high pressure sitting across eastern Siberia at 1,021 millibars of cold air dropping south and moving east. And eventually, once this sweeps through with drier air, we will see a little bit more of a pattern change, and that will be gradual and slow as we head toward the next couple days. Let's take a look at your temperatures then as we get into your Saturday morning. Temps across southeast will be cooler as the air is trying to dry out as quickly as it can. 30s and 40s for most areas, with the warmest weather across the outer coast and the southern inner channels for Ketchikan, Metlakatla, and Craig. Around Prince William Sound, we start to cool down a little bit. Valdez showing temps in the 20s and 30s there. Up around Golkena and Glen Allen, you'll see readings in the teens and 20s there. Up around Eagle and Northway as well. 25 for Fairbanks, 20 in Fort Yukon, and teens and 20s for the North Slope. Barrow looking at 20, 22 for Kaktovik. The Kotzebue Sound region will see temperatures in the mid-20s overnight. 26 for Nome, Unalakleet looking at 31. The southwestern coast, expect lows very close to freezing, a little bit warmer around Bristol Bay in the upper 30s there. McGrath and places in the upper Kuskokwim in the low 30s there, 35 around Kodiak, and low 40s around Dutch Harbor and Unalaska, as well as the Alaska Peninsula. The central and western chain will cool off into the mid-30s overnight, south central in the mid-30s as well. High temperatures for your Saturday then are expected to warm back into the mid to upper 40s, closer to 50 around Sitka. Again, these are daytime highs, so conditions will be clearing up, and you should see at least a little bit of sunshine in southeast. Again, a welcome sign of relief after a pretty soggy day today. 43 or so around Haines and Skagway as you move down toward Petersburg and Heidelberg. Areas in the southern inner channels out toward the Dixon entrance will probably be a lot closer to that 50-degree mark. Prince William Sound temps back in the mid-40s. Around Cook Inlet, lower 40s as well. That includes Areas around Anchorage, Palmer, and Wasilla, about 38 in Talkeetna, a little bit cool there, and snow up the road. Be careful if you're driving on the parks. 47 around Kodiak, up around the central interior, closer to 40 for Fairbanks. That wind will still be blowing through, but it's not going to be quite as strong as what you've experienced the last couple of days. Fort Yukon, 33 degrees. The North Slope back in the mid-20s for daytime highs on your Saturday around Norton Sound, back in the mid to upper 30s. Southwestern temperatures back in the lower 40s and closer to 50 degrees for the Alaska Peninsula, 50 around Unalaska and Dutch Harbor, and Attu closer to 40. Overnight low temperatures for your Sunday morning, back in the upper 30s to lower 40s for southeast. Prince William Sound, you're looking at temperatures that are in the mid-30s for the most part, in the mid-30s to start off Sunday morning in Anchorage, and down toward Kodiak you'll see slightly milder weather in the lower 40s. Around Fairbanks, mid-20s there, 16 for Fort Yukon. Bettles looking at 20, Ambler closer to 26, and Anaktuvuk Pass down to 17 with 8 in Arctic Village, and teens for the North Slope. Southwest, expect morning lows in the upper 30s to close to 40 degrees, 26 in Nome in the Alaska Peninsula, and Unalaska and Dutch Harbor in the lower 40s, with St. Paul starting at 38, making it up to 41 by Sunday afternoon. 35 in Nome, 25 in Barrow, mid-30s for Fairbanks and South Central. Expect to see temperatures in the lower 40s there, with Kodiak looking at 47, and many in Southeast expecting temperatures back in the upper 40s and lower 50s, with Prince William Sound readings back in the 30s and 40s as well.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
On the aviation weather now, as you can see, for Saturday morning, IFR conditions will continue for the Beaufort Seacoast on the south-facing slopes of the Brooks Range, all the way out to the Kobuk and Noatak Valley, south of Point Hope and Point Lay. You'll see decreasing ceilings and visibility. A little bit of a break there just east of Shishmaref and into eastern ends of Norton Sound, and then you return to MVFR quickly around Kotzebue. And then for the YK coastline and most of the Delta, IFR conditions there. A few breaks around Bristol Bay in the morning, and then also around Atka. Look for IFR conditions, some breaks over the Gulf Coast. MVFR for southern parts of Southeast. As you move ahead into the afternoon, considerable improvement for Southeast as we go through the afternoon. Most of the interior is looking pretty good, as well as many of your eastern Alaska Range passes, and north of Anchorage things look okay. Southwest, you'll notice a wide area of MVFR, some improvement around the Seward Peninsula and Norton Sound, and lingering IFR conditions there, generally south and west of Adigan and Anaktuvuk Pass. As we get into Sunday, IFR expands again in the morning. Most of the interior passes should be okay, but south of Anchorage, MVFR creeps back into Cook Inlet. IFR conditions developing along the next wave south of the Alaska Peninsula and into the Pacific coastline there. Kodiak Island covered up. VFR conditions there for southeast, and look for increasing areas of IFR out in the west. You'll see that expand even more as we get into the afternoon on Sunday. Conditions will worsen once again around south central with heavy rain moving through. Southwest, look for IFR conditions there and expanding IFR into the Brooks Range. Let's take a look at your pass conditions for your Saturday. Then Anaktuvuk and Adigan Pass, again right there on the edge, especially on the south approaches. Look for IFR conditions as we just saw for both of those northern passes. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass will start out okay, but lean over toward MVFR conditions as your Saturday goes on. Expect similar conditions around Rainy Pass. Windy Pass may do just the opposite thing. You might see some improving conditions there the further east you go into the eastern Alaska Range. Same goes for Isabel Pass. Look for improving conditions through the afternoon with VFR expected. Antasta Pass, we expect to see VFR conditions developing and staying put there for most of your Saturday. And Fort Sanita Pass, VFR conditions expected there. Portage Pass may see MVFR develop on the eastern side as we go through your weekend. And Chilkoot and White Pass right now looking A-OK for your Saturday morning and afternoon. As far as freezing levels go, the cold air is certainly trying to take back over, but you'll notice the warm air influences across the central and eastern Gulf are certainly still there. A very tight gradient with the 2,000-foot freezing level just south of Homer and Seward into Kodiak Island. You get to 4,000 feet, and then southeast starts at around the surface freezing line around Chilkoot and White Pass and ranges all the way up to 10,000 feet as you get down to the Dixon entrance. The 2,000-foot freezing levels also hovering over the YK Delta this weekend. Icing potential is going to be pretty high up there. We've got a lot of warm air that has surged northward, but we will be watching out for some moisture moving in, and there will be some snow production. So this will be changing from west to east as we go through the weekend there. Levels are running between 7 to 8, even 10,000 feet. As far as the jet stream goes, look for levels around 75 to 105 knots coming in from the south and west. The ridge building over Alaska is going to slow the weather down as we go into the next several days there, but it is still working with storm energy and moisture that's in place to produce ample precipitation across the interior there, and some of that again will be in the form of snow. High pressures across the west coast, a pretty steady onshore flow there south of Alaska, and the main corridor of weather is moving in from the south right now. You can see that Pacific jet running anywhere from 125 to about 140 knots. Still a very substantial trough of low pressure out across the western Bering and the western end of the chain right now. At 9,000 feet, that south and westerly wind again helping to keep things warm across a large part of the state. High pressure sitting across the eastern Gulf. So overall, our winds running in from the south. You're looking at speeds around 40 to 45 knots across the Alaska Peninsula. For southeast, wind speeds are a little slower thanks to high pressure sitting there very close to home, 15 to 20 knots. And south and westerlies up around Seward Peninsula and Kotzebue Sound at 3,000 feet. High pressure is a little bit further north and east over the Gulf. Wind speeds still slow over southeast. We have a southerly flow across south central and the Kenai Peninsula. South and westerlies slow across west and southwestern Alaska. The interior, you'll notice once they come over the mountains, speeds pick up to about 45 to 50 knots. And low pressure off the Chukchi Coast bringing in westerlies 25 to 30. What about turbulence? Well, we're still watching for a very expansive area of at least considerable moderate through your Saturday, generally below 6,000 feet. Winds are going to be moving quickly through this area closer to the surface, so be careful there. Below 6,000 feet for the western Brooks Range and also from Kodiak Island all the way through the eastern chain below that 4,000 foot mark. Stay with us. We'll have a look at your sea ice edge and your marine weather here in just a few minutes. Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider, and joining me once again is Cindy Preller. She is the Tsunami Program Manager for the National Weather Service in Alaska region. Thanks for joining us again, Cindy.
Thank you, Dave.
We're talking about tsunami awareness and safety here in Alaska especially, and one of the things that has been one of your main focuses is the Tsunami Ready program. What is that, and how do Alaskans find out more?
Awesome. Yeah, Tsunami Ready is a National Weather Service hosted program in partnership with Storm Ready.
Okay.
And it is a program that we conduct with our partners in the state, but it's mostly community driven. So if a community wants to become Tsunami Ready, well, the first thing they need to do is get a hold of me or their local WCM at a weather forecast office or their tsunami team at the state level.
So, and this is something that's a NOAA grant, so there's money available to help encourage the preparedness at the local level there in the city or the village.
Yeah.
What are some of the places that have done this already?
Oh, our oldest Tsunami Ready city is Seward.
Good.
You know, but also Sitka, Homer, Valdez are the, you know, the main players, but we've got several Tsunami Ready communities that I'm very proud of. It takes several years to accomplish this. And so a few of the things that they do is the tsunami risk will be assessed by someone like me or another scientist will help find out, you know, really what their probability is. We'll create an inundation map, an evacuation map. They'll have a mitigation plan. We will set up some partnerships with the schools, make an evacuation shelter, and then they need to practice. But it is the city that owns the program, really. It's up to them. And many cities would like to have sirens, and so we help them get those. And, you know, and they practice. They have to practice.
Sure. So let's say I'm driving into a place like Seward that's tsunami ready. What are some of the things I should look for as maybe a visitor so I know maybe where I need to go or can be more aware of my tsunami risk?
Absolutely. The Tsunami Ready signage is really blatant. It's this, you know, blue and white curling wave sign, and there's different shapes of signs that'll show you if you are in the hazard zone or where the evacuation routes are and when you're out of shelter.
Okay. So this is a multi-step process that helps the residents be more aware of their own risk, but then also prepare for when that risk arrives.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, you know, many communities sound their sirens daily, some sound them weekly, you know, to make sure everybody knows what they mean. And there's often drills. We have an annual drill once a year. We have Tsunami Awareness Preparedness Week, and that's a good time for each community to do some exercising.
Okay. And is this a program that is unique to Alaska?
Absolutely not. It's national.
Okay.
And all over the country, you'll have the same signage, so it's consistent.
Good. So if I'm taking the kids to California, I should be able to see something familiar.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And, you know, some communities hesitate because they think it'll discourage tourism. And so I would like to tell those communities that what they're actually doing is they're encouraging responsibility.
Sure.
The tsunami's going to happen.
Right.
And it's going to hit every coastline. So, you know, it's not about when, it'll be any time. So the fact that they're showing tourists that they are making steps to be prepared for this, I think would encourage people to want to stay there.
Right. And that would be no different than, say, you or I visiting the Midwest, where we know there's going to be really bad thunderstorms and maybe there's a risk for tornadoes. We're aware of that risk when we go there.
Absolutely. If I see a sign for a tornado shelter, I'm going to remember that.
Right. Okay. All right. So we're just doing a better job of being more prepared with something that's bound to happen again.
I hope so.
Okay. Very good. Where can people go again to learn more about the Tsunami Ready program here in Alaska?
Well, one, there is a Tsunami Ready website. So, you know, just Tsunami Ready,
Google
and that'll
Tsunami
get you
Ready.
there.
Okay.
And then probably the best person for people to contact is their warning coordination meteorologist at their local weather forecast office, which is Anchorage or Juneau, most likely.
Okay. All right. So most of the folks along the Bering Sea coast, again, are not at a huge risk for tsunamis at this
No,
point.
they don't need to worry about it.
Okay,
Thank
very
you.
good. But always learning to be prepared no matter where you are in Alaska, no matter what the risk, always a good step. And tsunami is a major player in that, as we well know from events like 1964.
Alaskans are resilient. I really believe in them.
Very good, very good. Well, Cindy, thank you so much for joining us again, and please make an effort to learn more about the Tsunami Ready program in your village and town if you haven't already. We'll be back with Cindy again next time to talk more about the Tsunami Warning Center in Palmer, Alaska. We actually have a group of geologists working for the National Weather Service, so scratch your head on that one and we'll join you next time. See you next time on Alaska Weather Packs.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Time for a quick check of your sea ice edge, and as you can get this information anytime from weather.gov/Anchorage/ice, we encourage you to check that out for the latest information and updates. You can see that we've got some slow growth across the north coast there, but a lot of the ice that formed in the last day or so has been moved away or just eroded and melted because of the warm winds and everything moving across the north slope there. Easterlies will continue in the region. The weather will gradually improve a little bit, but you can see there is certainly more higher concentration growth across the northern parts of the Beaufort Sea, slower growth across the northwest, but we're also getting some growth in some of the more protected areas and also down close to the northern parts of the Yukon Delta. So make sure you head to the website for the latest. This is the latest update from the Sea Ice Desk today. Here's a look at southeast, and you'll have slower winds across the inner channels tomorrow as high pressure begins to build in. Northerlies across the Lynn Canal at 15 knots with 3-foot seas. Northwesterlies in Clarence Strait with 3-foot seas there as well. The winds across the outer coast will be a little bit stronger. Northwesterlies outside of Yakutat and then picking up speed as you head down toward Sitka and Craig. Northerlies there 20 to 25 with 10 to 11-foot seas. And as we go into Sunday, you'll notice the wind's starting to change direction a little bit more. We've got high pressure across western British Columbia and also a high building out across the eastern Gulf. The result of that, with a trough right in the middle, is going to be kind of a variable flow across the region with fog in the morning on Saturday and then slowly improving conditions on Sunday. Probably still some patchy fog here and there. Look for southerlies to pick up there across the northern Gulf, though, with 6 to 7-foot seas in the north. The inside passages looking at 2 to 5-foot seas with the highest across the Lynn Canal, and north and easterly winds blowing offshore 10 to 15 south of Sitka toward Craig. For south central, look for light winds as we start up your Saturday. Easterlies inside of Prince William Sound. South winds generally across the northern Gulf, 8 to 9-foot seas there. South and easterlies moving across the Barrens, and southerlies for the Cook Inlet region, 2 to 4-foot seas there by Sunday, with high pressure strengthening across the eastern Gulf and low pressure building across the west. The winds are really going to start to pick up here across the northern Gulf. Easterlies still moving through, about 30 to 35 with 9 to 11 foot seas and northeasterlies inside of Prince William Sound, and stronger north and easterly winds across the southern Cook Inlet region and west of the Barrens. 25 to 30 with 6 to 8 foot seas. In Bristol Bay we go now. Southeasterlies 25 with 6 foot seas on Saturday. A south and easterly wind across Kodiak Island, 4 to 9 foot seas on either side, and building winds across the Alaska Peninsula as low pressure is moving closer to home and it is deepening. As we get into Sunday, you can see winds packing in a little bit more around Sand Point, 18 foot seas on a 40-knot wind. Southerlies working up the east side of Kodiak Island, 25 knots, 10 foot seas there, 8 foot seas through Shelikof Strait on the northeast flow, and easterlies from Bristol Bay all the way down the Bering Sea coastline, 5 to 8 foot seas on 30 to 35 knot winds. And once again, the brighter colors mean higher seas. You can see those building across the western Bering as well. Look out toward the chain and northerlies on the western end of this low pressure system, 25 to 30 knots there all the way out toward Kiska. The south and easterly winds ahead of it, and building seas 11 to 13 feet there on the Pacific side, 8 foot seas on the northern side. And as we get into Sunday, notice the seas really coming up here. Again, those brighter green colors showing seas above, maybe even past 20 foot. 20 to 22 foot seas there across the central and western chain, and pushing through the chain there as well. And 14 foot seas there across the Pacific coast, with 26 foot seas on a southeasterly gale, 45 knots there around Unalaska and points eastward. So again, the winds and seas coming up sharply out toward the east. Across the west coast now, northerlies will be fairly light north of Nunivak Island. Southerlies inside of Norton Sound at 25 knots, and also outside of the Kuskokwim Delta, 8 foot seas there and a 25 knot wind. 20 knot winds in St. Paul and St. George Saturday build quickly to 40 knots for St. Paul and St. George on Sunday. 15 foot seas expected on that northeast flow, strengthening around St. Matthew as well. The winds diminish inside of Norton Sound. And for the North Slope, easterlies 20 to 25, 7 to 9 foot seas in the open seas, open waters, and southerlies up the Chukchi seacoast, 25 knots with 7 to 8 foot seas on Saturday. All areas see improvement, but that gradual southerly warm flow continues for everyone, 10 to 20 knots in most areas, and 3 to 8 foot seas in the Beaufort, and about 5 to 10 foot seas there for the Chukchi seacoast. So warm weather continues. Here's a recap of tonight's weather. Winter weather advisories posted for many across the central and northwestern interior. For the Kobuk and Noatak valleys, expect 10 to 24 inches of snow by the end of the weekend. So it will continue to snow for many of you up there. Showers will gradually wind down in southeast. A flood warning will gradually fade away, but flooding is occurring in Juneau this afternoon. Colder air sweeping into the west coast will keep rain going, and the winds will start to pick up for southwest and eventually move rain back into south central by Sunday. Thanks for watching Alaska Weather. We'll see you right here again tomorrow.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.